All right, and as we kick things off, Erin Ley is, well, let's just...
Excited to be here.
She's excited to be here. On a personal note, Erin, you have also overcome so many odds. I think let's get the elephant out of the room. Let's just jump right on into it, because it will lead to an amazing expression of your awesome professionalism. But you've come and overcome one of the greatest battles. Which battle is that? And tell us a little bit more about your journey.
It was cancer. But let me just say thank you guys so much for showing up, because that's life, you know? That's when you show up, you just keep growing. So I want to give it up to John and Eric before I start. And thank you. And everybody stand up and look at your neighbor and give yourselves a round of applause, a standing ovation, okay? For those of you who never had a standing ovation, you had it today. All right? So thank you, John, for asking that question. And it started in 1991, and I was working on Wall Street, Series 7, 63, the insurance license, power lunches, you know, closing deals with guys twice my age. I was in my 20s because I was more licensed than they were. And it was the 80s, and it was not exactly, my Aunt Rita was one of the first institutional traders on Wall Street in the 60s. So I was riding around in limousines with my aunt in Brooklyn, and it was amazing. The energy was incredible. And I was like, I have to work on Wall Street. You know, my parents are like, where are you going to go to college? I'm like, I'm going to Wall Street. But then I gave St. John's a whirl, and I gave Malloy a whirl. And I had to get to Wall Street. And it was the 80s. It was the late 80s. And it was not the same bull and bear that my aunt had. It was not the same culture that she had in the 60s. It was crazy. So long story short, I ended up getting sick at 25. And I ended up with non-Hodgkin's lymphoblastic lymphoma, which is a very rare pediatric cancer. It was a 2.5-year protocol. Very few people lived at that diagnosis in 1991. And the blessing in that diagnosis was I learned about personal development. Before that, I loved my Chanel bag, I loved my shoes, I loved my house out in the Hamptons. I was so superficial, so superficial. And then when the doctors told me that if the chemo didn't work as fast as the tumor is growing, I'd be dead in a month. And I was like, oh my God, I'm 25 years old. It's 1991. I was going out to the Hamptons and partying and having fun and going to work. And then all of a sudden they said I'm gonna die in 30 days if the chemo didn't work. I have no idea where these books came from. Full Catastrophe Living by John Kabat-Zinn introduced me to mindfulness meditation at the back of the book. Shaki Gawain's book, Creative Visualization, introduced me to visualization. When I married meditation with visualization, I kept living every time the doctor said I die. Literally. They would come in crying, telling me you have a white blood count of 0, an infection we can't figure out where it's coming from, 7 blood transfusions, crazy antibiotics, shake and bake nickname. And I was like, no, I'm gonna live. Get the hell out of my room. You didn't tell me about meditation and visualization. I learned about these things I could do for myself. And they thought it was crazy. They left the room crying. They were crying, I wasn't crying. Because I'm like, I learned about this and I believed in it. So.
And I've gotta add too, sorry to cut you off, is that was not very popular.
Oh, no.
At the time.
No.
So in many ways, it could have been considered one of those organic medicinal woo-woo things.
Oh, they thought I was nuts. They literally thought I was crazy. Like,
so add that to the element of what you had to come over. Continue.
Yeah. So so they literally thought I was nuts, and they felt sorry for me. And long story short, like 2 weeks later, I was fine. And all I had to have was a blood count of 1, and I was able to get out of the hospital. So I'd pick up the book from Shaki Gawain, Creative Visualization. It was on the floor. I was like, come on, Erin, just pick it up. I had no strength. Just pick it up. Just pick it up. And I lifted the book, and I was like, that was a win. And I celebrated the win. You know, I picked up, and I was able to just read it and read it and read it, you know. And I started to not just believe it, but I started to know it. You know, I started to just know that I'm going to get out of there. It's like when people today, they're like, do you believe in God? And I'm like, you know what? Years ago, I would have been like, yeah, I believe in God. Now, I'm like, the word belief for me is so weak. I know God. You know, I know that I know that I know, just like I know there's air. You know, I don't believe there's air. I just know it. So that was massive epiphanies that I was having, ba-boom, 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 in the first 6 months. The protocol was 2.5 years, and I needed the 2.5 years for that personal development. and I kept living. Every time they said I'd die, I went on to have 3 kids they swore would never happen. And I made up a quote, and you guys, if you have a pen and paper, you should write it down. When I was in the hospital bed, I made up a quote: celebrate life, and you'll have a life worth celebrating. Celebrate life, and you'll have a life worth celebrating. I didn't focus on the disease. I focused on excellent health. Excellent health, white light coming through the crown, cleaning the body, excellent health. That's what I focused on, because I learned what you focus on is what expands. What you expect is what you get. So I expected excellent health. And so when I went on to have 3 kids that they swore would never happen for years, the doctors at Sloan Kettering started having their patients call me at home, and that's how I started coaching in the 90s, and I did it for free for years. And because I was on fire to empower cancer patients, because nobody was talking about that at that time. And so when I talked about meditation and visualization and affirmations and all these things you could do for yourself, the doctor started calling me the miracle maker. So they're like, oh my God, you're like the miracle maker. And I was coaching the patients in the treatment rooms even before this happened. So they said, after I was doing it for years, and my kids, they're spilling Cheerios on the floor, and I'm putting them in front of Blue's Clues so I can get on the phone with these patients, and it was group coaching. Didn't even know I was coaching, but I was helping these people with their family, because at the time, everybody had extensions in different rooms. And they were coming back with color and not getting sick, and it was absolutely incredible. So that's how I started coaching in the 90s, and then I went on to just coach people who felt stuck and overwhelmed and distracted through referrals. But when you just show up in service of other people, you guys, life gets to be fun. Life is so good. So celebrate it.
There's that message. Give it up for Erin, by the way. Yeah, kicking cancer in the butt, seriously. And I've got to add, too, just as she is one of my personal friends, watching her attitude conquer anything from what I understand, you've never changed. I want to know from you, because it is Speaker Hearts, where does that drive, that will, that power come from within you to just say, no, I'm in control. This is my life. I get to decide what is and what's not. Where does that come from for you?
Well, I learned about it with the personal development books. And then when I started living it, I was like Rhonda Byrne from the beginning of the movie The Secret, 1991. I craved it. I was reading so many books, and I couldn't get enough of it. So then after just seeking, I went to knowing. I'm like, oh my God, this is a thing. This is a thing. I went to the old girls Catholic school, the private school in Brooklyn, and then in Garden City, New York, and nobody taught church, I'm a Roman Catholic. Nobody talks about this in church. Nobody talks about this anywhere. My father's a PhD in philosophy, and we still didn't talk about it even then. So when I went from seeking to knowing, to then understanding it, to then being it, when you I live my life, what you see is what you get. This is just me, And it served me through a crazy divorce, after 22 years with my ex, and shocked and devastated, went through that whole thing. And I was like, Erin, you got to do what you did with the cancer. Meditating within the first 17 seconds of waking up, meditating again, at night. My thing is a crystal clear vision. Napoleon Hill, right? Definiteness of purpose. In 1991, I wrote out a crystal clear vision. Where do you want to be in 2.5 years, Erin? When they kept telling me I was going to die. Where do you want to be? And I wrote down a vision. I want to get out of this hospital. I want to get married. I want to have kids. I want to have a house with a master suite. I went detail of exactly what I wanted, And I checked off everything on that list. Literally, I dorm at the master suite. I've been in my house for 26 years now. But through the divorce, I did the same thing I did with the cancer. And it's funny, you guys, because for me, I stayed focused on, my kids were 10, 11, and 15 when he left. And he decided to be Norm from Cheers, but I stayed focused on the horizon, kept just showing up. It started networking in 2017. I'm like, I haven't done this since the 80s, and I was very honest. And everybody was super supportive, in my experience. So I just kept showing up. And then these conferences started when my daughter turned 18, because finally I was able to get on a plane and go somewhere. Because, again, I had to wait. She went from 10 until she turned 18. And I hadn't flown in forever. I was like, all right, Erin, just get to the airport. And then just get to check your bags. And then just one thing at a time. Then get to the gate, and then get on the plane. So after a couple of times, it was like, then you just do it. But keep showing up, because every time I showed up, I met somebody and I grew. I met somebody and I grew. And Sharon, I met you, and Mark Victor Hansen, I did a summit, and Sharon, I was crying with Mark. Sharon and Mark, when it was 2020, I'm in the builds, and I'm gonna cry now. But I was in the build, I can't believe I'm gonna cry, it's ridiculous. But you were so kind, and Mark was so kind, and they accepted, yes, I'll do the summit. And then Mark said that he would give me a testimonial for the cover of my book, Work Love. And then he gave me, then I was like, you know what, I've gone to all these conferences, I could do that. I've never done this before in my life. I got the sponsors, and I got the AV team and the DJ, beautiful venue on Long Island and Westbury to empower female entrepreneurs and celebrate the men who support us, because I love men. I love I have 2 sons and a daughter. I'm not gonna just blackball men. So, I wanna celebrate them, right? And it was amazing, and over 100 people showed up, and John and Eric were there, and it was just, there were a couple of things that were not perfect, but I was so proud of myself. Just do it. Like, if you want to do something and you're called to do it, just do it. Don't let anything stop you. And then we could talk about fear if you want, because I could just keep going on.
I would love to. It looks like you kicked those tears in the butt, too, so I'll take my handkerchief back, and I'll ask you.
Sharon, let me just say, Sharon, not just with the summit, but I was at your house, and you helped me with my business model. So generous, so generous. And listen to me, you guys, for a second. When she said to me, Erin, you have $1 million business model, my reaction was, oh, wait a second. I'm a single mom. Now, mind you, I was saying I'm going to scale to 7 figures for a year. But as soon as Sharon said, you have $1 million coaching model, I was like, oh my God, I'm a single mom. I can't imagine the work that's got to go into that. That's for the men in my world. I grew up in Garden City, very wealthy, millionaires and billionaires in the country club and everything else. But it was the men that were cranking out the millions and the billions, not the women. They were all at the country club. And so when she said that, I was like, the paradigm, we don't even know it's there, you guys. It's like looking at the back of your head. You don't know it's there. That's why you need somebody to talk to, whether it's a coach, a mentor, somebody. And this way they could bring out the best version of you. So after being at your house, I did meditations on millionaire mindset meditation, billionaire mindset meditation, all these different things. And you said it doesn't have to be hard, right? Because I was just so in the struggle. And you look at and then out of the blue, my business partner over here is an inventor, asked me to partner with him, and we have 2 massively robust patents going on that are worth millions and millions and millions. I mean, like, it's incredible. I don't want to say the amount of millions, but like, it's just a blessing, a blessing. But I had to believe we can never outperform our self-image. My self-image was stuck at 100, 250, 1,000. A million to me was just out there. But we can't outperform our self-image. We have to work on our self-image to stretch it. Just keep stretching it. It's not going to happen overnight, but you got to work at it, do the personal development work, and before you know it, it's coming to you. You attract it to you. That's just universal law. It's a thing. A lot of people don't believe in it. The law of vibration, which the law of attraction is secondary to the law of vibration, how you're vibrating, the energy you're giving off, that's what you're going to attract to you. Go ahead.
Ladies and gentlemen, before we conclude this interview, I just want to say, get a chance to meet these speakers throughout the day, especially Erin. Shake her hand, give her a hug, get to know these people, feel their energy and their hearts. But Erin, let's close this out by saying what you always say on the way out. It's obviously live your life on track, but what do we say? Onward and upward, baby. Give it up for Erin Ley!
Onward and upward, baby.